All right, Shane, thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Shane Ciurleo, or as you're known on Twitter, Toowoomba Tips, also part of the mailbag team, which is pretty new. Purpose of today is we're just going to learn about sort of your journey in wagering. I'm going to probe you with a few questions, find out, how your punting's involved, all the challenges along the way. But let's get started with some hip hop. Best hip hop artist of all time.
Yeah, probably Tupac is my favourite hip hop artist of all time. Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day, actually. I feel like in today, we're shooting this during the COVID times, hence the Zoom. A lot of Black Lives Matter stuff on. I reckon the great man, if he was around, would be causing a bit of ruckus at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got my older sons into a bit of it as well. So I've been able to sort of talk to him about the lyrics of Tupac's music and what it means and how it's relevant, but really, it is really relevant today. So, he's probably my number one all the time.
And just sticking with this theme for one more second, who's in second?
I was pretty keen on Biggie's stuff, bit of Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G. I don't mind his stuff. Of the local scene, of the Aussie scene, obviously Hilltop Hoods. I've tried to play the recorder to a couple of their tunes. And there's a local artist, Briggs.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I was pretty keen on his stuff when he first sort of hit the scene, and that still makes it onto the playlist.
Senator Briggs, very good. Oh, well, you've covered the globe and a couple of different time zones as well. So appreciate that. Anyway, let's get into it. Talk to me about. So you're a pro punter. You live in Toowoomba. Obviously, your backyard and betting locally and betting in Queensland's one of your strengths. How long have you been plying your trade as a punter?
Yeah, well, I've always been involved in racing to a degree. Mainly, I started off in the trot. So I grew up in a small country town of Victoria called St Arnaud. So pretty strong trotting area. Sort of at the time we had, a number of pretty good trainers that would bring their horses to the trials, and I'd go to the trials on a Sunday morning, and there'd be a couple of noted sort of professional punters that would get up there and have a look. I had no idea what I was doing at the time or how that would help me going forward, but that's where it all sort of kicked off, and I would have been a successful losing punter for about 20 years post that period of growing up in St Arnaud and playing footy and then punting horses with a few beers.
And how did you go at the harness? Were you were you finding a few? Like, how are you going back then?
So finding a few off the trials, and learning a little bit about sectional times and that sort of stuff, but without any data behind it. It's just Gary Hucker was a fella that used to come to the St Arnaud trials and have the clock and that sort of thing, and that opened our eyes a little bit to how it all works. But no programs or anything like that back in those days.
And then when did it evolve into horses? Like, were you just pickling around same sort of time frame?
Pretty much pickling around. A couple of guys that we all grew up as a sort of group of guys that grew up together, and we all sort of, a few of them went into the gallops game, and a couple stuck in the harness, and sort of pickled around there. Starting to watch a few gallops, and then the trials got shut down basically at St Arnaud, and then the sort of focus shift to the gallopers and started getting involved in ownership, and a few of mates had a bit of success, but still it was all it was just recreational really. It was a Saturday, what are we back in around footy, and so that's how it all started and sort of evolved from there over a period of time, I suppose.
And what were you doing for a crust back then? Obviously this is just a weekend hustle. What were you doing for work?
Yeah, so I was in agricultural machinery, actually. So I was doing a bit of sales and marketing in agricultural machinery in a small country town. And that actually led to my relocation to Toowoomba. So I moved to Toowoomba to be general manager of a family business up here that sold agricultural machinery equipment across southeast Queensland. So sort of rolled into a pretty serious gig up here. I had 100 odd staff and tens of millions of turnover, and it was that's what I come up here for and sort of focused on.
And that's early 2000, or what sort of time period are we talking?
No, that's sort of like 2000 and probably 2013, I think that was when I moved.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so about 7 years ago. So,
and then you did that on the weekend, and then just sort of transition and got more interested. Yeah.
So when I got here, didn't sort of know anyone when I moved up here, so I just thought my interest is in racing. They race here pretty regularly. So this is about 8 years ago, I think. They race here like every Saturday night. So I thought, oh, well, the turf club seems to be the place for me to go. They sell beer and they bet, and that's sort of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So sort of got involved in a few small shares and a few horses, and that got me going to the jump outs. And, there's probably about 600 or 700 horses, I think, last count, trained up here on the track, registered training here. So it's a massive training centre, and they're probably having sort of 10 to 12, 6-horse jump outs every Tuesday, which are not televised, not recorded. The old Queensland. That's
I like the sound of that. Yeah, very good.
So Queensland don't have to trial their horses before they have a start. So basically they're going into the trials, going into a race start unseen to the general public.
Nice and hot. I love it. And then they're potentially, going to the city or going to a country meeting, and you've just sort of black booked them and kept your eye on them. Yeah.
So that's how I started. Basically, that's what turned me full time. So I was sort of getting worn down in my job, and a couple of horses that I had shares in has had a bit of success, and I sort of started to shuffle my schedule so I'd free myself up for Tuesday mornings to sneak to the jump outs and hang around with the right guys. There's some smart operators that get up there, with the binoculars and stopwatches. It's all hand timed. You've got to try and look at the horses in the parade and see if they're wearing heavy shoes or race plates. You've got to write the brands down. Like, nothing's provided for you at all. It's just all got to be done manually. And horses would pop up, on a Friday. So I wasn't betting full time. So I was still I classed myself as a recreational punter when I was working.
Yeah.
And I could sort of, sneak onto Sportsbet and cop $10 about something that was winning and SPing about $3 at Gatton or Warwick or Dolby or some of these grouse joints. So I thought I did that for a little bit. Obviously, as the winners come in, the accounts sort of dried up. Were starting to get more difficult, but I was still sort of mugging away on a Saturday as well. So I'd no doubt I'd be given a fair bit back. I was pretty strong on numbers. It was my management style in my job. So, I wouldn't say I was a spreadsheet manager, but I was able to sort of identify, opportunities within the business or identify dangerous positions in the business based on the numbers. And the more I sort of thought about it, the more I could transfer those skills, into wagering. And I got lucky. I don't know what you call it, lucky. Had a couple of good results for a month, and I built a pretty nice little bank. And then for some unknown reason, my missus agreed with me when I said to her I should try and do this for a living. So
really, that's all it took. Just a couple of months and some great some great variants and a bank that you created.
Well, the bank growth was pretty quick. Grew quickly in those couple of months. So I had kept results for a longer period of time than a couple of months, obviously. But so I was able to separate where the profit was coming from and where I was bleeding money just by keeping results. And that was that was a discipline learnt from my job, I suppose, about keeping a close eye on keeping the numbers, keeping the results, and understanding where the money's coming and going. So I did that. I probably did that for at least 12 months anyway. I had a good amount of data behind me.
Okay. And what year is this?
So this is like about 5 years ago. So it's
2015 or something.
2015, 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So
and
yeah,
how did it go? When did you quit work and just said, I'm in?
Pretty much. So that's basically what happened. I sort of set up, obviously got set up ways to make sure that I could bet, to the right amounts and that sort of stuff. I suppose in the time leading up to it, I probably should have mentioned earlier, in that time leading up to it is when I started to do some research on who's doing it. And obviously that's what got me on the Twitter, like sort of focusing more on the racing side of it. I'd put a few of my thoughts on Twitter to try and get some engagement from people to tell me why it can't win or why it could win. Obviously you get your Twitter racing wars, over those sorts of issues, which is always a bit of fun. But for me, it was just all part of sort of trying to fish out who were good follows and who you could learn from. So, and still to this day, I still do listen to a lot of form analysts and professional punters. There's so much information out there. I mean, you only have to look at the hub, for example, on the Betfair website to see there's so much good info. And and I still read it today. I'm still trying to, how I've punted from the first year that I went out full time to what I do today is completely different. It's evolving all the time.
Is that reflecting your growth, or because the industry sort of evolves so fast and continues to move? Is it both of those things?
Probably a combination of both. Like in the first few months, when you're winning, it's great because you can get on with the corporates a little bit. You sort of your volumes aren't massive, sort of first starting out. So you go from sort of backing a few winners. You're getting on at the right price. You're getting on early enough. You're getting on for a little bit more than what we're used to nowadays, obviously, from winning punters. But and then you start finding that accounts were restricted when they started shortening and getting beat. So once all that started to happen across, every corporate account that you could open, I had to start reassessing because my margin dropped significantly. The first 12 months was almost, I'm not sure it was a full 12 months. I can't remember exactly, but it was a period of like a honeymoon period where early days was good. I could spread my bets around. I wouldn't have to use 5 or 6 different corporates. I could just use 1 or 2 for this bet, 1 or 2 for that bet, and spread it around a little bit of Betfair. I was doing a lot more betting outside of the pointy end of the market at that time as well. I think I'm doing probably more pointy end stuff now.
Right.
So just
Thursday stuff. Whenever the corporates were, you'd knock off early prices and stuff like that.
I was able to, I was able to when I first started, but that quickly changed with a bit of success. So, so that was sort of, I suppose, the first hurdle, if you like. Because it was a bit fat, I suppose. Yeah.
And just curious, we've had a couple of questions on Twitter in the last couple of videos that we've done on talking to people like yourself. Was there a certain goal that you had for your first year as a pro? Was there an amount you wanted to turn over? Was there a sort of profit on turnover number you had in your head? Were there some metrics that you were shooting for where you knew, I'm ready to make a full-time income out of this. This is what I need a month, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it did. I did. Didn't think I'd be able to replace my salary, basically. But the numbers that I was recording, before I did it full time, was pretty high. Because I was selective of what I was backing off those jump outs, and I could get on. So I quickly learned that was not sustainable once those accounts started to dry up. But I definitely worked on that, and everyone does it differently. I was drawing a wage out of my bank.
Right.
I've got a wife and 3 young kids. I've got a couple of kids go to private school, and one I'm trying to talk out of going to private school. So probably puts a little bit of pressure in, and does. I have a bank, and that's just how I managed it. That's what I have to do. I still got to live. I still got to draw a wage. At the time, I wasn't working anywhere else. I wasn't doing any work for any websites or anything, but that did change a little bit as well. After I think it was like 12 months in, I started doing a little bit of work for a website, writing a few tips, for a few $100 a week. So
it all helps, all that sort of stuff. Any time you can sort of take the pressure off a little bit. Getting to the specifics of that, were you just paying yourself, every 2 weeks, superannuation? Were you trying to keep it as small business ownership as possible?
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was doing. Yeah, so I was just paying myself a weekly wage, and like I would, if I was running it like a business, basically. So plus super and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
That's really good. And then with that, doing that as a father of 3, incredible, pressure on you there to deliver. Were there any moments of really bad periods, or you couldn't get on, or the results weren't falling your way? Was there anything like that popped up?
Yeah, about this time of year, about June, when the wet tracks sort of start to hit, and I've seen it again this month. I'm going okay, But normally, yeah, the tracks change, particularly up here in my area that I sort of work on, the provincial Queensland stuff. You start to see a lot of biases in the colder months. The grass stops growing, the tracks chop out, you get a bit of rain, and there's a massive difference between the good section of the track and the bad section of the tracks. And
right,
you think you know where a horse will be because of the map, but sometimes the people steering them don't believe in bias or don't have the ability to get to the right part. And then you'll see me tweet after the race, completely losing my mind because.
And so knowing that comes up, do you sort of stake down during that period, knowing that this is a bit of a leaner period, and we've just come off the right where you could bet up in some good races.
Yeah, I don't mind betting up on good horses with good trainers and good jockeys, but I do stake down, on those rain affected tracks. Definitely.
And do you take any time off during the year? Is there a period, over Christmas or wherever, where you might freshen up, or is it every day, every week?
Well, the last 3 months have been a challenge because of the COVID and the changes that's made to the calendar. So normally in Queensland, we'll have a midweek meeting at, say, Ipswich or something like that, which doesn't get a lot. Like, I still do the meeting, but it doesn't normally get a lot of action from me. And then all the racing's mainly condensed into Friday, Saturday. So we'll have a provincial Friday, sometimes a Sunny Coast Friday night. Then we'll have, Doomben or Eagle Farm Saturday, provincial meeting at Gold Coast during the day, and then Toowoomba Saturday night. So I'm not saying pretty free during the week, but earlier in the week I can review the meetings. And then I've got that sort of middle period where I don't have to do a hell of a lot. Obviously, do a little bit of the metro stuff when the acceptances come out on a Wednesday, but then the fields come out Thursday for Saturday. So the betting
you try and stay pretty fresh, during the start of the week. Once you've got your reviews done and stuff, you're just waiting until the weekend, doing your form leading up, but not, replenishing yourself a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, because it does get a bit draining, particularly when you're sitting in front of your computer from 7:30 Saturday morning for scratchings, reassessing your speed maps and everything else that goes with it. And then betting all day, because I normally sit in front of my computer all day when I'm betting. I'm not just taking an early price and going and playing golf for sometimes kids sport, obviously. But I normally try and squeeze the kids sport in between after 9 o'clock when the betting's done and before midday when the first jumps. But I know I'm normally sitting in front of my computer on a Saturday. I use the Betfair Live function every day. Betting, it's just a must. I couple that with dynamic because I like to see where the early money went, and then I want to see where the late money went, and I use a third party application. I use BetAngel